away we go. All right, again, so thank you all for coming tonight. I'm Jeff Demansky, Executive Director of the Hudson Valley Energy Program, which is a local program manager. Glad to have folks here. I'm assuming most people are from the communities that are renewing from the 2-year contract that's coming to a close for the fixed electricity supply rates that we've had since for many communities since 2019, for a few communities that are part of the partnership since 2020. And now we're embarking on what will happen after July 1st is a 3-year contract, an opportunity that you guys can take it or leave it for a fixed electricity supply rate with an emphasis, with a default emphasis on 100% renewables from New York. And so that is the essence of what this idea of a community choice aggregation program does. And I will use the analogy sometimes of CCA, standing for community choice aggregation. So I'll talk about it in general terms, and then I'll dig into details about the Hudson Valley Community Power Partnership Program, the rates, the contracts, the partners, some other details, and then frequently asked questions, and that's kind of a review. But I also am going to stop now and just thank our leaders from our communities that I've recognized have being here tonight. And please do, I'll keep an eye on the chat. If you want to say hello, please send me a chat window, but I'm happy to have Supervisor Ray Oberle from the town of Clinton. And I recognize Michael Whitman joined us, a member of the board of the town of Clinton. And I noticed that Crystal Ford, who is Phillipstown's Climate Smart Communities Coordinator, is with us tonight as well. And please, folks, Michael, Ray, Crystal, if you want to say something during the presentation, or if you want to chime in and do a clarification, I welcome your participation. And these things are often best as conversations, and we will get there. There's plenty of time tonight that I will stay here to answer questions and discuss aspects of the program. But thank you for being here. And again, I don't see anything in the chat window, so I'll keep going for now. And if I forgot anybody that's here from one of our communities, any leaders, please let me know. So I can just acknowledge that you're here. All right, so I'm going to move forward with the first bullet of our agenda here, covering what is community choice aggregation. And I can do it in several slides, but this is a simple way. In one sentence, we can describe what community choice aggregation is. It is a policy that enables municipalities to determine default energy offerings, including electricity supply, and for us, there's an emphasis on just electricity supply, on behalf of residents and small businesses within a community that launches a community choice aggregation program. So really, it's an enabling tool, a policy, that was allowed in New York State in 2016. And it is something that is for all eligible residents and small businesses within a community. And when it launches, if and when it launches, if it makes sense to the leadership, the dollars and cents of it makes sense to the leadership alongside the environmental goals, and it launches, it is something where all eligible residents and small businesses are automatically included. That's what we mean by default. It creates a new default situation in terms of electricity supply choice. And I'll talk about what was the old, for these communities, default setting on the upcoming slides. And it's kind of keyed off by that last bullet. So in essence, folks, as a default, folks have to choose to not participate or opt out, which they can do at any time. And there's never a fee. There are, as I'll get into, 3 reasons that this is being done. One is to promote more renewables on the grid. All of the communities that are partners in here, and the state in doing this, really wanted to show that you can add a win-win scenario, that you can promote using just the marketplace, no subsidies, a way that we can promote more renewables on the grid. And through the power of numbers, by basically forming a buying club with all the membership of these communities represented, you can get a very competitive rate, opposite of what people expect. You can actually pay the same or possibly less for renewable sources from New York State renewable sources, hydropower, wind, or solar, than people have paid or would pay for non-renewable sourcing. And that's typically a decision. The old default is when the utility company makes that decision for you. This idea of forming a buying club for designating, choosing electricity supply choice it's based on the same opportunity that's been available, and I'm speaking to the last bullet here on the slide. It's based on the same electricity supply market that's been available to individuals, every individual utility customer in New York State since the late 1990s, since the utility market, since the energy markets were deregulated. And that means when they were deregulated, that means that what a lot of people still think is a situation, they think that Central Hudson and all the other companies produce power. So they make the supply and then they deliver it to us. Since the late 1990s in New York and in every other deregulated state, that's not the case. When deregulation went into effect, Central Hudson and all the other utility companies became delivery companies, kind of like FedEx or UPS. They don't make the packages that they deliver. In this case, the energy. They don't make the energy that they deliver. They're not allowed to own the power generation stations, but they make money on being the reliable delivery mechanism to get it reliably to our homes, and that never changes. So just so you know, whether the program is in effect or not, the role of Central Hudson as a delivery company stays in effect, and that means that they continue to do the billing. All of this happens through the Central Hudson bill. We do not displace that role at all. Storm damage repair, they continue to do that. Every customer service, they're there, they do all of that. So we do not displace them. We don't cut into, through this program that the towns are doing, into the business model by which Central Hudson or any of the other utility companies have made money since the late 1990s. Because when they do make a supply choice for customers, it's a pass-through cost for them. All right, and so that is, again, the old default situation. All right, so just quickly reviewing this sentence of what CCA is, or community choice aggregation. Again, it's a policy enabled by municipalities, enables them, and they do it by passing a local law to offer a new default energy offering, decision made by this aggregation of communities for a new choice, that's the new default, focused on electricity supply on behalf of their residents and small businesses. Now, on the next slide, I'm going to dig in a little bit more to that concept about this supply choice. What is electricity supply choice, and what have people had available to them before CCA? If you look at that second, the second line of the slide, so this is electricity supply choice before CCA. And I call this my menu slide, and I'm going to use it a few times. So think about this as like a menu in a restaurant. And maybe this is the appetizer section, and you're going to pick one, and you can only pick one. And you have to pick one, but you can only pick one from this menu. Before a CCA program launches, your electricity supply choices, how electricity supply, the how your electricity is made, where it's made, and how much it costs, two choices. The first, the state default, the current old default before CCA, that's why there's an asterisk on that first choice, is that the local utility company or Central Hudson makes that choice for their customers if they don't take advantage of number two. All right, so the old default by state mandate is that Central Hudson makes that decision as a pass-through cost. They don't make money on it, but they will do that. And they do only what they have to do in terms of renewable decision-making. There is state policy that requires a certain amount of the mix that they source to be renewable, but it's still a very small percent, down in the teens of percentage of the total mix. Predominantly, all the utilities, when they make the supply choice, it is predominantly gas and nuclear, then some hydro in New York State. The second choice that's been available since deregulation went into effect, anybody can opt out of that first default choice of Central Hudson making the decision, and they can enter into a private contract with a third-party supplier, commonly called ESCOs, which stands for Energy Supply Companies. And there are dozens and dozens that have registered in New York State to be third-party supply companies that will put people into individual contracts so that they can choose how and where and how much their electricity costs. Green Mountain Energy, Ambit, Viridian, these are common companies that people probably recognize the names. And many people have tried this. The two reasons people typically choose to opt out of the utility making their decision and go into choice two is to look for either a lower cost than they've been paying when Central Hudson makes their supply decision. That's one. Or two, to promote renewables, through their power of as a consumer power to say, I want to pay for renewables, power produced by renewable sources. That has, for an individual customer, always cost more than it does when they're paying for non-renewables or the non-renewable option. So that's the situation before CCA is launched in the program. And you see there's a third space in that box at the bottom. And just a spoiler, that's where CCA will go. And CCA is sort of the best of all worlds. It marries together those reasons in a have your cake and eat it way, where you can get the best of all worlds. It is done by partnership, by leadership of communities. And so this is a snapshot of a letter that many of you probably recognize, especially if you're from the city of Beacon. But again, this is a program enabled by a local law within your community. And so the letter, the partnership, every communication that we do as a partnership comes from your community. And you can see in this example, the city of Beacon seal in the upper left. And this letter, as for those who've received it, it comes from either your supervisor, your mayor, maybe the city manager, or the council or board of your town or city or village. And this is a renewal of a program that these 9 renewing communities started in 2019 or 2020. And what we've done is we've renewed the contract for a fixed rate. And we're entering, as this letter describes, a 3-year contract fixed rate to replace, to pick up seamlessly the end of a 2-year contract that we started in 2019 for 6 of our communities and for 3 of our communities in 2020. So it is, again, a communication from the cities and towns and villages in which you live. And that's how this works, that these cities and towns and villages create this buying club to deliver the advantages of the third option in our menu table. So after a CCA program launches, there is a third supply choice. And as I promised, that last box in this table is filled by CCA. And in those communities that have enabled CCA and have found it to be advantageous and decided to launch it, it becomes the new default, as we've been talking about quite a bit. It is something that, again, in this menu, you can only do one of these options, but you can always do any of these 3 options. Okay, so anybody can at any time do any of these 3 options. Just because the CCA program launches does not mean they're stuck and it's the only thing they can do. Anybody, it is the new default. They have to say if they don't want to take advantage of it, if they are an eligible customer, but they can opt out at any time and go and have Central Hudson make their decision, or take advantage of choice 2. They can enter into a private contract for supply choice. If somebody has a third-party supply contract already when a CCA program launches, we consider them ineligible. They're not eligible. We don't kick somebody out of their current contract. So predominantly, an eligible customer, people for whom the letter is sent, are those in choice 1. People for whom they're in the existing default condition. Anybody, though, can join the program. And if you opt out, you can jump back in. This is truly offered as a completely flexible program because nobody is in a contract. In the partnership, the community enters into a contract. Your city or town or village enters into an agreement, a 3-party agreement with the supplier that we picked as an aggregation and the administrator that they chose. But it's so that without a contract, everybody has that flexibility to opt in or opt out at any time. So what are we talking about logistically? What does this look like in your day-to-day or your month-to-month? And I think it's helpful, and this is where I'll start to differentiate from something that I mentioned people commonly confuse with community solar, with where does this electricity supply decision show up on your Central Hudson bill? I live in Beacon, which is one of the CCA partner communities. This is one of my bills from, I think it's late 2019. There are several important things. There's a little bit of an education about how to understand your utility bill by looking at the detailed page of your utility bill that you receive monthly. The first thing I'll point out, outside the red boxes, is almost the top half of this page, about a third maybe. And that is the electricity delivery charges section. And again, we're only talking about electricity here. This program does not affect gas service or gas supply decisions. But that top section, that's not in a red box, that is the section that Central Hudson makes money on. We have no impact on that. And Central Hudson can't do any kind of penalizing action by increasing their delivery charges if you're in a supply, if you've made a supply choice, whether privately in a private contract with an ESCO or through a CCA aggregation. All right, so delivery charges are overseen by the state, by the Public Service Commission, and utilities have to ask when they want to change those, and they can't change them just because of supply, as I've explained. That's been the situation since the late 1990s. All right, so the top third we don't affect. That's the section that Central Hudson gets paid for doing storm damage repair, for doing billing, for having a meter on your house, all of the delivery services, maintaining the lines, all that. What we're talking about so far with electricity supply decision is the middle section, the top red box. And I'm saying that that's where CCA electricity supply lives. And this is what it looks like when you're in the program. And a lot of you are probably been in the program for most of the last 2 years and probably have something similar, but many of you may not. If you are not in the CCA program, or if you are not in a private supply contract with an ESCO, you would have 3 line items in this supply section as a Central Hudson customer. It wouldn't have as many as the top section, but there'd be 3 line items. As a member of a CCA program or a customer with a private ESCO contract, you have this 1 line item, and everything is in that line item. There's no weird hidden fees. What this program provides is one simple fixed rate, and that's a rate is some amount of dollars or cents per kilowatt hour. And that is shown for the current still contract, and what's been in place since 2019 for me and Beacon is this one rate here. And it's in dollars, that's why it's 0.06361, but in cents it's 6.361 cents per kilowatt hour. And that's everything. That's what the winning supplier who bid to be our supplier, a company called Direct Energy, that we gave the nod to through the competitive process, bid to be the supplier for this aggregation, this partnership of communities. And everything's in there, including an administrative fee that my organization and the administrator receive to support the program, to continue to do outreach and customer support, opting in or opting out of the program and doing education. It's all in here, there's nothing else. That rate, this 6.361 cents per kilowatt hour, is multiplied by my usage that month for my supply charges, and that's what it is. So that's where electricity supply lives. CCA, this electricity supply decision, is often confused with solar, a decision that somebody makes in terms of solar. And when you hear community choice aggregation, that has increased the confusion that people have with a new opportunity, relatively new opportunity. So it's been around for a few years, to become a virtual owner of a solar system. And that is what community solar is, that you can become, without putting solar on your home or business, you can own virtually a portion of a big field of solar panels and receive benefit for that. That is something that people do as a way to promote these projects, these big fields of solar panels in their utility territory. And by doing so, it's a symbiotic relationship. They become a subscriber, which the developer, the builder of that field, needs to get for every one of the solar panels in that field. So by becoming a subscriber, you help them get the full load of subscribers they need, and they get additional state benefit for being a community project that's delivering benefit to the state and to the community members in that utility territory. And in return, you get a monetary credit. I am a community solar subscriber, and you can see in this month, in this April, I think 2019, I received $81, I think it was 2020, $81 off of my total electric charges for the portion of my solar fields that produced energy that month. This is not related to how much electricity I used that month. Let me say that again. How much electricity that my portion of my virtual solar panel ownership produced that month is converted into dollars. It's not related to how much I use that month, which is up here. So the community solar is not supply. It's not related to my usage on a per month basis. It is just that symbiotic relationship with a developer by which I derive a monetary benefit. So that is separate. You can see it's a separate financial transaction. It lives in two separate parts of my Central Hudson bill from the supply portion of our program. A very common question we get too is if somebody has a solar system on their home or business, does that work with community choice aggregation electricity supply, with CCA electricity supply? The answer is yes, you can. The credits that people would receive for having a system on their home also live down here in the same solar section, the payments and adjustments section. So they do work together. And I'll reemphasize that by showing you the menu slide again, but now I've added an additional menu. I hope that you guys have become familiar, since I'm kind of talking it to death, with the electricity supply menu. As I've kind of made the analogy, this is the appetizer. You have to pick one. You have to pick one, but you can only pick one appetizer in terms of that supply section of your bill. Let's just for the menu's sake of the analogy, let's consider this the entree section. Again, you have to pick one of these choices, but one of them is to do nothing. That's choice A. So do nothing about solar. You have to pick one, but you can only pick one. All right, so you can mix and match between menus, the two left and right menus, but you can only take one within one of the tables, within one of the menus. So in terms of solar, just to reemphasize and to distinguish the supply decision from solar, when it comes to solar, the three main choices that people have are to do nothing, choice A, about solar. You don't have to do anything about solar. Or B, you could put solar on your home or business. Or C, you could, if you don't have solar on your home or business, you can become a subscriber to a community solar project. But if you have solar on your home or business, you can't do community solar, and vice versa. And again, that is separate from the supply decision that we're talking about. And so just to reemphasize that from the utility bill. And I hope that clarifies things for some folks, but I'm happy to revisit this. All right, so more about, that is generally what CCA, community choice aggregation, is about. That's sort of the first bullet of our agenda. For the most part, now we're entering the second bullet of our agenda, and that is talking about a live example that many of you have been part of and may be part of going forward for the next 3 years, the Hudson Valley Community Power Community Choice Aggregation Program, the partnership. And again, Hudson Valley Community Power is not an organization, it's not a company, it's a partnership of all of the logos that are down here in the lower left. What's represented down here under the community partner section are the 9 communities that are renewing into a new contract for a fixed rate for a fixed period of time. Our 2-year contract for that 6.361 cents per kilowatt hour, that was the same rate every month for 2 years, and it will be that through June 30th, is ending. Now we're entering a new 3-year contract with a new rate that I will show you on an upcoming slide. And so this is the city of Beacon and the village of Cold Spring in Marbletown, the city of Poughkeepsie, Phillipstown, the town of Red Hook, the town of New Paltz, the village of New Paltz, and the town of Clinton are our 9 community partners renewing. All of these communities chose Jewel Community Power, a private company based in Westchester, to be the administrator. They are a state approved, having filed an administration plan, approved administrator for the program. And Jewel chose to have a local nonprofit be the program manager, and that's my organization right there, Hudson Valley Energy. In the new contract, we all picked not Direct Energy, but to replace Direct Energy for the new contract, a company called Columbia Utilities. That's their New York operating name, Columbia Utilities. Their parent company is called Indra. If you have the letter, you've seen that on the return address, Indra, but it's Columbia Utilities in New York. And they gave us the fixed rate. They're handcuffed into our program to deliver what we want. And I include Central Hudson in this section of partners because, again, we couldn't do it without them. We don't replace them. We don't displace anything that they make money on, but they're essential to how this operates. So those are all the partners in the program. There is lots of good information, additional, more detailed FAQs than we'll cover tonight on the HudsonValleyCommunityPower.com website. And again, for those of you who've tried to go to the website and did not enter www or HTTPS in front of it, for some reason, there's a website glitch. If you don't put www in front of it, you won't get to the web page. You'll get the GoDaddy page. So even though I didn't put it here, please remember to enter www in front of Hudson Valley Community Power. And there's lots of good information there, including, as I talk about, a way that you can opt in or opt out of the program on your own, or change the supply rate if that's an option that's available to you. All right, so there's lots of good information here. So moving on to the details about what we're getting. So now I'm digging into another snapshot of the letter that many of you received. And in particular, this is the letter for the town of Red Hook, showing that we have different rates for different rate classes this time. This is different than it was for the 2-year contract with Direct Energy, where we had one rate, one type of rate for both residential and small commercial. The energy marketplace is an evolving space, and sometimes there's a difference for the suppliers in terms of what it costs to provide power to different rate classes. And that turned out to be the case this time when we went out to bid this spring. And we had to, they had to give us 2 different rates for small commercial and residential. So small commercial customers have about a half penny higher rate per kilowatt hour for our 100% renewable fixed rate for supply. But this is the 100% renewable from New York State sources. Predominantly, it's been hydropower. As it's 100%, and it's been, and I think it's been, to date, it's been 100% hydropower, but there will be more solar and wind power. Those are the 3 sources that we allow through the program that are going to be coming online as sources. But this is the rates that we're paying for this 100%. And this is extremely competitive rates to what people have paid to the utility company, even though it was a bit strange over the previous year. I've highlighted under the table, we do include this footnotes, and somebody just jumped up with a question about it. It says, the footnote says, rates do not include gross receipt tax. If GRT is collected in your municipality, it will be added to your rate. That is one of the state requirements that we need to put on there, because it's a mix match in state, of which some communities do include this, and it's an arrangement between the community and the utility company if gross receipts tax is collected. We include this footnote for all of our letters that are sent out. None of our partner communities have a gross receipt tax in the Hudson Valley Community Power Program. So it does not apply to our programs. We have another program in Rockland, in Orange and Rockland territory, and 3 of the villages do have that. So that's one of the reasons we include the footnote. But it is not something that is included, so that everything is reflected, as people will see on the utility bill, in the table that's shown there. All right. So 8 of our 9 communities have an additional rate option available to them. And that's what's shown here, a little expansion of my table. You still see the 100% renewable rate shown there. And there is, but also to the right of the 100% renewable rate is a standard fixed rate. It's also a fixed rate. It is not the default. You can see the default is not atop that phrase, standard fixed rate. It is a mix that mirrors what the utility company obtains. And that is what is shown in the first numbered column of this table. And that is a 12-month average of what Central Hudson has charged for a comparable mix, which is predominantly nuclear and gas, or gas and nuclear in order of amount, and some renewables in the 2 different rate classes. Again, the ones that we offer through the program are fixed rates. The 12-month is an average of variable rates. And just so you know, we do show that our rates are higher than this 12-month average. But if you look at the double star footnote, that 12 months started in April in 2020. And I know a lot of people don't want to remember this, but April 2020 is when the pandemic really hit the economy. So this is an artificially low 12-month average of what we've seen with Central Hudson rates. And if you go to, we do keep a running table on our website, on my Hudson Valley Energy website, doing a rate comparison. And you can see that in April and March, Central Hudson's rate was significantly higher than our program rates. And while it's lower now in a shoulder season month, we do anticipate that over the life of the program, Central Hudson's rate will vary. And we believe our rates, even for the 100% renewable that have your cake and eat it scenario, will be very competitive and very possibly better than what people have paid for non-renewables. So it is uncertain. We can't guarantee that this will be a cost savings, cake and eat it scenario. I anticipate, especially because we have a 3-year fixed rate and a lot of other pressures that are out there in the energy marketplace, that this will be a cost benefit, not just an environmental benefit. It is already, though, a very cost competitive rate. What we don't show on this slide, and I do show on the tables that I do maintain, this is definitely better than what people could get as an individual customer for supply rate for the most part, predominantly. So it is absolutely a cost competitive benefit. And again, this is fixed rates that will be the same exact rate every month for the 36-month period and starting after July 1st of this year. So the bill that people receive in August most likely will reflect, if they stay in the program, the fixed rate and the default, if they decide to stay with the default. The letter, this is another snapshot from the letter, goes into detail about what the renewables are. It just explains that there are supply options in a community where they have a standard option that's described. And in this is, and I will talk about this more, the ways you can change option if you want to. And it describes in the middle bullets what we're talking about, as I've said, 100% renewable by state requirement, by state order. They are New York connected, within New York renewables, hydropower, wind, or solar. And that is by March 2018 requirement of CCA programs. All right, so that is, here we come to the last slide, basically, of describing the current program and what the timeline looks like. The welcome letters that many people have received were sent out to eligible customers on or about May 19th. Again, eligible customers were those folks who were either already in the program since last time, or were in a situation where Central Hudson was making their supply decision for them, the first option in our menu table. Not included were people who have existing third-party contracts, people who have blocks on their accounts. Some people have put blocks on their accounts because of past bad experiences. And so they did not receive letters. And some people have forgotten, but that's the most common reason that people do not get letters. Also, folks who might be in a bill pay assistance program, commonly known as HEAP, Home Energy Assistance Program, they are not automatically included because there's not a guaranteed savings. We can't guarantee that there'd be savings. The only risk of this program, the one and only risk, is that there can be months when Central Hudson's rates are lower than our fixed program rate. Again, we think on average we're going to do better, but the fact that we can't guarantee it is why we don't include the Home Energy Assistance Program folks, so the state won't allow them to be included. All right, so letters were sent out on around May 19th. That starts a state required 30-day opt-out period, which is a 30-day period where anybody who does not want any change to happen, if they're with Central Hudson, can take action to not be included, to never be rolled over into the program. It is not the only time that you can opt out of the program. As the ... explains, anybody can opt out of the program at any time, and there's no cost. There's no weird fees or charges or anything. And anybody can opt back in too at any time if they change their mind later. And that's what we're here to do, to help them do that. And again, as I said before, the program rate will be reflected on the Central Hudson bill beginning on the first meter read date after July 1st. And so, like I said, that'll likely be the bill that people see in August. At the bottom is a snapshot of the Hudson Valley Community Power website. All right, and then I'll go into some details about if you don't want to be part of the program, or if you're in a community where you might switch your rate, these are the options. This is how you can opt out of the program or take other action. And this is explained in the letter. Again, this is another snapshot from the letter, and it explains in a box, if you do not wish to participate in the program, you may opt out as follows. Any one action is sufficient. You can return this card that's about the size of an envelope. It's kind of poster card stock paper that's in the mailing, and you can just sign it in the red box that I've shown here. There's not a red box on it. I just emphasize in the signature site. Just sign it, put it in the prepaid envelope, and mail it back. So that's step one. That's option one, returning the enclosed opt-out reply card. The opt-out reply card, as shown here. This also has all the information you need to take any of the other actions. You can call us, as many folks have done already, at our helpline at 845-859-9099. And we have extension 2 just for differentiation for Central Hudson customers. And you can give us the information that's on your reply card, the name that's on the account, the pre-enrollment ID. The pre-enrollment ID is one of the consumer protection natures of the aspects of the program. The supplier does not have the account number. Central Hudson does supply the eligible customer list, but they don't transfer the account numbers until the program goes live after the opt-out period. So that's why there's something called a pre-enrollment ID in these mailings, so that people's Central Hudson account numbers are not floating around out there in the mail. So again, you can mail in the reply card, you can call us and give us information, or you can use the same form that we would use on the HudsonValleyCommunityPower.com website to submit this information into a form to opt out or to change the rate that you might prefer to have. And so that is shown here. This again is the Hudson Valley Community Power website, as shown by here, www included. And this is a navigation. So you float over CCA, and then there's a few good pages underneath it. You can understand the rate options, dig into the rates, but this is the one that we're talking about for the form, the enrollment/change form. So you click on that, and there's 3 pages, 3 simple steps of entering the information on the opt-out reply card, and you get an email confirmation so you know that your action has been acknowledged. All right, so now I'm at the common questions section. And again, folks, I will go through the chat. I've seen a lot of questions come into chat, and I'll go through them and probably start out there, but I will stop at the end of this and give you time to ask questions live too. All right, but the common questions that we've gotten as kind of a review. Does this replace my utility company? Does this replace Central Hudson? And you can play out the answers in your head. You know that no, does not replace the utility company. All of this happens through Central Hudson's utility bill. It's a line item change. It does become a new default, but all through Central Hudson. Some people are surprised by this, saying, why are you doing this? How can you do this? It is enabled by the Public Service Commission by an order in April 2016. And it really is structured as a public benefit. The idea that you can have 3 benefits. You can have environmental benefit, promoting renewables on the New York State grid, changing the mix. You can also get a very cost competitive rate while you're doing that, potentially even better than you paid for non-renewables. And 3, you are not in a contract. It is transparent and it is fixed both in rate and period. These are some of the ways that the state has decided that to use this vehicle to address many of the bad experiences that people have had in that private ESCO market. Many folks have been happy, but a lot of people have had bad experiences. This program is structured, with a team vetting the options, creating no restrictions, and a very transparent platform, transparent offer to deliver opportunities that are out there in the energy marketplace that are, difficult to navigate sometimes. And so it really is a gift, a public benefit that your community is doing for you. And they receive no financial benefit of doing this. And there's no cost either for them, for the community, for your city or town or village. But it's done just to basically deliver that win-win-win scenario opportunity in a very simple way, in a way you do not have to think too much about it. But if you don't want it, you can opt out. Will it save me money? It's not guaranteed. I've talked about how I think it's going to work out quite well, but it is definitely cost competitive and it's definitely fixed. So there's that additional consumer benefit. You know exactly what your rate will be, and it is quite a good rate. Am I locked into this for 3 years? I think I've hammered this, that no, anybody could exit freely at any time. What happens after the 3 years? Will the rate go crazy? This is a question we often get because people have had those strange experiences as private customers in the energy supply marketplace, where they've gotten into something that's a fixed rate for a short period of time or a period of time, and then they're stuck in the contract and the rate suddenly balloons and goes up. No, this is, again, fixed rate, fixed period. It's a 3-year contract. If the community that you're in does not repeat the process, everyone automatically goes back to that first option, the original default option, the original opt-out, where the utility company would make the decision. But they can go through the whole process again, as all of the communities, the 9 communities are doing. And I forgot to mention, It looks like 4 additional communities are joining the partnership. So we're going to be up to 13, maybe 14 communities that will be the partnership by the fall of this year. That includes Saugerties and Rhinebeck and the town of Gardner, which is next to New Paltz, and the village of Nelsonville, which is next to Cold Spring and Phillipstown. A very common question we get on the phone is, why didn't I get a letter? And that is about the eligible customer question. As I said, the most common reason people may not have gotten a letter, and I have confidence that the mail is actually working pretty well. There might be some delay, especially at the start of the pandemic, but things seem to have gotten better. But the most common reasons people may not get a letter is because they're not supposed to. They might have a current energy supply contract, or they've blocked their account at Central Hudson. It's something they would have done. And some people forget that they've done that. And so we often advise people to contact Central Hudson to ask them, hey, do I have a third-party contract? Do I have a block on my account? And very, very commonly, that's the case. Lastly, my review questions, does this work with my existing solar system? Does it work with if I have a community solar subscription? Does the electricity supply work with it? And the question is yes. I mean, the answer is yes, it does, as we talked about with those menus and the different sections of the utility bill. So it does. All right, so that is now my presentation, and I will encourage folks to unmute if they want to ask a question. But I'm going to start now revisiting the questions that I see in the chat window here to start with. And again, yes, I did record, and I don't know if anyone asked this, but again, thank you, Supervisor Oberly, and I will share the recording with the communities, and there'll be multiple ways that you can find this presentation recorded. And back to whom we already know to address questions. Again, this is a program, I think, as you understand now, we're focused on electricity supply rates. Question, can the situation that happened to Texas regarding the storm outage and temporary rate increase happen to us in this program in a similar outage condition? If Texas had a community choice aggregation program going, we are different from Texas in a number of ways in New York State. We are not an isolated grid, so we would not likely have seen the escalation in rates first, generally for all customers. But if there was a community choice aggregation program in Texas, or there might be something similar, if you were in a community that had a community choice aggregation program with a fixed rate, you would have been protected against those surges in price. Folks here that were part of the existing aggregation, the existing 2-year contract, were protected, if you will, against the 10-cent rate that happened in March in Central Hudson territory. So no, it couldn't happen. And that's the beauty of this program. It's one of the protections, is that the fixed rate can't change. We've handcuffed the supplier to the rate. All right, next question. Those of us with home rooftop solar and net metering are not impacted by the new plan, as well as our bi-monthly billing that remains? Question mark. All right, so it's a question about having solar on one's home. And I can go into a little bit more detail about that. If you have a solar system on your home, and with the very most typical net metering arrangement, it means that you can basically roll back the charges you have for the electricity use. And many do very well, getting close to the zeroing out the amount of electricity charges they would have by the production of the system that's on their home, that they are hosting on their home in one form or another, either through ownership or through leasing. Our program would have no impact at that point in time. Our fixed work supply rate would have no impact on that. However, most folks, and our program has no impact for those people who are familiar with these net metering arrangements with home solar systems, that if they overproduce, they actually can make money. They can sell power back to the utility company at a rate, a wholesale rate that's agreed to at the time they sign their contract. That's an arrangement that we do not impact. That is unchanged. We don't affect that. So that wholesale buyback rate still applies. The time that a solar system owner would be benefiting, if you will, from our program or using our program, most solar system owners do not actually produce all the electricity that they use. They don't balance out in the course of a year, particularly during the winter. And so they end up buying electricity at the supply rate that is available at the time. And if they're not in a fixed rate program like CCA, they would pay whatever the utility rate was that month. which is typically higher in the summer months when wouldn't affect them, but it's also high in the winter months. And so they could be paying, higher rates for the time that they do need to buy electricity. If they're in the CCA program, that's what they would pay, the fixed rate of supply that the CCA program has, our community choice aggregation program. So that's how it works with solar on your home or business. So this says, looking at the mailing included with the opt-out card, the rates per kilowatt hour for the renewable is higher than the other two alternatives. How is that financially beneficial to users?
Go lie down.
Oops, sorry. If you mute yourself, folks, please, that'd be great. So again, I talked to the table. I'll put the table back up here. With the three rates that are on there. So they're saying about this table, they're saying that our 100% renewable is higher than either the 12-month comparative rate average of Central Hudson or the fixed rate. Certainly, our rate is higher than our own fixed rate that's non-renewable predominantly. But the difference is so little. I mean, we're talking about, again, almost about a half a penny, which for the average customer would equate to a few dollars per month difference. So it speaks to that through the buying club, this is what we're focused on delivering, is the bang for the buck, if you will, for promoting renewables. You get predominantly benefit of being in the renewable. You can save a little bit more, and that's why it's an option in some of the communities, that if people want to choose a fixed rate, they can at any time. But you're getting a much better rate than you do than if you were an individual customer in the private ESCO marketplace because of this buying club. Again, to the comparison to Central Hudson, it is definitely higher than it was shown in this 12-month average, but this is, again, this is basically the pandemic average. And if you look at utility rates, you can see that our program was doing great compared to Central Hudson, was doing very well in the months preceding this. But then, just like the rest of the economy, utility rates just plummeted in April. And they stayed pretty low. They started to recover, but they stayed lower than they would. Had the pandemic not happened, this rate would look very different. And our program rate and this program rate by comparison would look not bad at all. And probably even we would be in an advantageous position, but I can't promise that. But that's the answer to that question. All right. What is the community let me see. Let me get down to the question section again for my information if you want it. All right, so what is the community distribution generation credit? What is it based? Community distribution generation credits. I explained about the gross receipt tax, which is the next question. You're talking about what you see on my bill, I think, the community distribution generation credit. So let me go back up to my bill. And I think somebody is asking about what they see down here, the community distribution generation credits. That is the overly formal fancy name for the credit that I get for being a community solar subscriber. The general term for community solar, these idea of renewable generation systems like solar, wind, or hydro that are distributed more widely across our grids, that benefit community members through this subscription model, which is one of the most common. That's why they're called community distributed generation projects. It's one of the vagaries of the utility companies is that they use the fancy names that are more confusing. It could say it is my community solar credit. So that's what that is. That's what the community distribution generation credit is. And that's the $81 that I saved this month off of my total electric charges. So community solar is really quite excellent. I explained about gross receipt tax. It's a charge that can be added to utility rates in some communities, but it doesn't apply to any of our Hudson Valley Community Power communities. Is it a kickback to the town? I don't believe it's a kickback to the town, but that's I think more of a question for the utility company in the town for where it applies. All right, question. Is it likely that over the 3-year period, paying this fixed rate will result in a cost savings over just using Central Hudson? Let's see how you phrase it. Is it likely? I think it is very possible. I don't want to overpromise. I would say, based on what I'm hearing and what we anticipate, and the fact that we have a fixed rate, such a competitive fixed rate for a 3-year period, and utility rates typically go up, I do think it is very possible and potentially even likely that it will be a win-win scenario, that people will pay less for renewables than they otherwise would have paid, especially if some other policies go into effect that actually put a price on carbon generation. But that is very uncertain at this point. Question, are more hydro facilities being built in New York State? There is effort to build all kinds of generation stations, and there's a lot of groups involved in this exploration of how to build hydro stations sensitively. And this is, I'm very deeply involved in looking at this, including that there is a requirement for the facilities that we would use through the program. New generation facilities that are hydropowered have to be low impact, to use a phrase. There's actually a certification scheme to guarantee that they would be low impact, because hydro can be high impact environmentally. But there's quite a bit of scrutiny over new construction of hydro facilities. But there are projects underway and some old projects that are being improved upon for providing power. So Central Hudson is less money. I explained that. I think that's a question about the table, and that's shown, yes, in just a frank look at the table, but that's no predictor of the future in terms of Central Hudson versus our program rate. Question, what about the credit you received? Is that calculated in the fixed rate? The credit you received. If you're talking about the credit I received for community solar, it is just a monetary credit. It's best to think about it separate from the fixed supply rate.
So, the question that I'm asking is, what is it based on? How is it calculated?
The credit that I received, you're talking about?
Yeah, the $81 in your bill. How is that calculated? Is it calculated in, I assume it's not in the fixed rate, okay? How is it calculated?
Again, it's separate from the rate. When you subscribe, for the most part, the most common model of community solar, when you subscribe to a community solar project, they look at your 12-month history, and they look at your average usage over that 12 month, and they assign you a proportion of a solar field based on that average usage.
So is it reflected by the capital investment that was made in the panels and the hardware, the same way you would get a tax credit?
It is a straight up monetary benefit. Thankfully, there is a lot in there in the business model and the dollar flows that happen and what's baked into these community solar developers' business model. But from a simple perspective, it's really just a sharing of the additional monetary benefit they receive for going over the hurdles of creating a community project, proportionally shared out as just a monetary credit with the subscribers to the project.
But it has to be based on something, and you have to be able to predict it.
They structure it to be, this is what they look at, your usage. And this is, for the most part, the most common models. And this sounds like an oversimplification, but to some degree it wonderfully is. They structure it to target a 10% savings of your total electric charges, looking at your average.
And why is it generated? Is it generated because of capital investment? The same way, if you put in, you get a tax write-off, basically, for solar. Is that what it's from?
I think it's getting into the weeds to talk about the business model of the developer. From the subscriber's perspective, there's no tax credit, there's no benefit other than—
Well, I understand that, but I'm asking how it's calculated.
I think, well, you know what, I would definitely encourage you to talk to me offline about that, and I can fumble around in a conversation with you and we can work out details. But I think for the purpose of this call, I think just keeping it at a simple level is appropriate, just to talk about that's the basic way that the subscription works.
Well, the truth is in the weeds.
All right. Let me get through the questions and we'll definitely return to this, okay? All right. All right, so if you opt out now, can you opt in later for the balance of the 3-year program? Yes, absolutely. If you can opt in or opt out at any time. We hope you won't drive us crazy, but yes, we will help you do that. Or you can do it yourself using the form. Is there a list of community solar options we can look at? Wonderfully, actually, Central Hudson has some partnerships where you can look through the Central Hudson page and find community solar projects, but there's also lots of companies independent of that that are out there. I don't know of another clearinghouse location to find them all. But one of them is Central Hudson has a page on that. And Central Hudson also has a page on community choice aggregation, as a matter of fact. Why is Nexamp no longer our supplier? That's a question. Well, this Nexamp is one of the community solar providers. Actually, I am a subscriber to Nexamp, so I particularly know that. And this is a good opportunity to make the differentiation again, that Nexamp, a community solar subscription, is not your supply. You are not tied to the supply. You are not tied to the environmental benefits of that project existing. It is a fantastic thing that you do by being a subscriber because that project is alive for you. But basically the environmental attribute and the commodity electrons are basically consumed by or used by the utility company. So Nexamp is not, this does not displace your benefit that we were talking about, that monetary credit of being a community solar subscriber. The fixed supply does not displace that. It has no impact on it. Again, if you remember those two menus that I showed, they're side by side. They're like parallel train tracks. You can do both. You can have two trains running, or you could have one or the other, or neither as a customer. So you can do choice A and choice 1 in those tables. You can be a Central Hudson supply customer where they make your decision and you don't have to do anything about solar. But I hope that emphasizes the idea of the mixing and the matching. All right, I have a billing question. Oops, goodness gracious, I went all the way to the top. That's good.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, I have a billing question in regards to the older program that we were in. What we found out what was happening was originally the savings were really minuscule. They were a couple of dollars. And then we started seeing larger savings, and we were away at the time. And when we came back, we started getting voicemails on our phone saying that this company, Amoresco, needed our credit card number, for billing purposes and so forth. So it really got confusing because what was happening was, we would get a bill from Central Hudson with some of this Amoresco credit applied to it. So let's just make it real easy. Let's just say our bill was $150, let's just say. So we would get have to pay Central Hudson $100. But then this other organization that applied a credit to that bill, we then in turn also owe them money, which, I was trying to figure out. And I said, this is ridiculous. I mean, I want to pay just one person, one company, one entity, because, and then the other thing was I really had no way of knowing how Amoresco was, crediting our money or encouraging the credit. It got very confusing. And again, to pay two companies was ridiculous.
If I glean correctly from what you're describing, it sounds like you had a private energy supply contract with Amoresco. So you were in that choice 2 in my menu of supply options. You did go into a private contract with Amoresco.
Well, real quick, what happened was we were in a program originally, and I couldn't find the paperwork in between here, but then that company sold their contract to Amoresco. And then that's how we ended up in this relationship with Amoresco, where, they were legitimately sending a credit to Central Hudson, but the difference amount between the credit and their service, what they were paying for the electricity. So we had to end up paying them an amount, and we had to end up paying Central Hudson an amount. And then that's where it got crazy. And I really got annoyed and sort of lost my cool, because I'm saying, like, what's the benefit of me having okay, granted, you're giving us a credit. I don't have any way of knowing if that credit is legit, but now I still owe you money for the service that you provide,
It sounds, yeah, this is one of the benefits of our program, is the simplicity of it, the relative simplicity. That sounds like one of the challenges of being in a private contract, where it can get quite challenging, where there's the transfer from one company to another, more than just the way it's shown on the bill, which can look confusing, even though Central Hudson ostensibly has improved the understanding of their bill. It sounds like there's a lot going on there. One again, it speaks to the relative benefit of our program being relatively simple and what it offers, fixed rate, fixed period. Two, though, I'm happy to dig into this with you. This is what we do as part of our support program. And we've done this with a lot of customers, is help them look at their bills, understand what's going on, and even do some connections with Central Hudson. We can't speak on your behalf, but we can help coordinate conversation. But because of the complexity of reading the bill, you know, what my nonprofit does is help navigate this energy language that's out there. And I often now say, my cute little phrase, that energy really is a second language for just about everybody, including me, because it keeps on changing. There's so many options. We have developed courses that we used to do live, but now we have recordings of them on our site about understanding your utility bill. And we developed it with Central Hudson too, to kind of break down all the different sections of the bill and including how it reflects this. So that's there as a resource, but if you want to contact us using the contact information down below, I'll definitely dig in to try to understand what's going on with you if I can help further.
Real quick, you know, and I don't want to dominate this whole conversation. Real quick is like, under this program that you're touting, the one that we got in the mail, are we only going to pay one person, meaning the credit will be applied and we're not going to owe ABC Energy money? We're just going to pay a Central Hudson bill.
Excellent. Yes, exactly.
All right.
You only ever have to pay your Central Hudson bill.
All right, because there is some legitimate savings, even though sometimes it's not a great amount, but there is some legitimate savings. And obviously give you the old senior citizen routine, you know, we're looking to save money. Plus we have a house where we don't have any kind of option. All it is, it's 100% electric. So we can really get taken in the wintertime in terms of an electric bill, because that's our only source of for a utility there, you know. So anything that's offset by these other programs is really a big savings to us, you know, in terms of paying these bills during the wintertime.
Yeah, I'd want to look at it with you too, to make sure that maybe what you have through Amoresco, which is a pretty big company, they might have community solar options. And maybe it sounds like when you're talking credits and a separate bill, that you might be in a community or community distributed generation arrangement that I've been talking about as community solar. And that has been a second bill situation, but that is now, as of April 1st of this year, Central Hudson has facilitated consolidated billing so that even community solar, even like for me in Nexamp, I'm hoping soon my second Nexamp bill will go away, and Central Hudson will, as they pass through the payment to the supplier in the electricity supply section, they are now mandated and will pass through the payments to the community solar companies such that we will just see the savings and we just pay our Central Hudson bill.
Right, because that to me is sort of lunacy. Granted, you're getting the credit, but now you're paying the secondary energy supplier, the offset difference between the credit that they're giving you, what's being applied on your Central Hudson bill, and that difference for them supplying the service. So to me, that was crazy. We actually ended the relationship with Amoresco because, you know, they wanted your credit card and then charge your credit card in between also, which I wasn't fond of, you know?
Yeah, that might have been a community solar, like similar to a community solar arrangement, which is common model, but that again is going away, or it's gone away now that the utilities have complied with the state mandate to consolidate billing.
Right.
So,
as long as your program is part of this one-stop shopping and we're only going to pay Central Hudson, that's fine with me. I'm more than, you know, because I know there are some legitimate savings, so I'm more than happy to do that. And thank you again for your time. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. All right. Let me see if there's any other questions here. Just a thank you. So if that gentleman, if you're still on to talk about it, I'm still here. I don't see any other questions. But again, anyone else want to jump off mute and ask a question? I'm here, and there's no other chat questions. I've gotten really good with awkward silences too, so I'll just be here.
I'm good though. Thank you so much. You've answered all my questions. Thank you.
My pleasure. Yeah, I've got a teenage daughter, so I'm really good with awkward silences.
Okay, I'm still here.
Good. Go ahead. Let's see if you can. I can embarrass myself more. Let's go.
All right. No, I'm not. I'm just trying to find out, you know, whether it's beneficial or not. I think it's, you know, I prefer to do alternative energy, but I also know that delivery charges have gone up significantly in the last few years.
Yep, the rate
And
increase was
it's
filed where they could
incredible.
increase them by like 10%. Yep.
Now, more than that, for sure.
No, on annual, I mean, yeah, they
Yeah.
keep ratcheting them
I
up.
mean,
They have
every
to.
year it's gone up 10%.
Yep.
Yeah, well, they've kind of doubled basically. So it's, energy used to be a few dollars a month and now it's, a few hundred. So what I'm asking, because on your bill, do you want to put your bill back up again?
Yep.
Okay, it's just an honest question. I'm not trying to.
And I'm really in the weeds trying to figure this out.
I
That's
just want
part
to
of the
understand.
state question too. So I'm glad for this
Per bill, yeah,
conversation.
okay, right there.
Yep.
All right, so I look at your bill and I see on April 14th, you got a credit for $81. I say your electricity charges were 87. And your supply charges, they're what Central Hudson gets is 48. You get an $81 credit, you almost have free electricity. So I assume that's not going to happen that frequently. So what I'm trying to figure out is, the predictability of that and what it becomes, annually, let's say. Because your rate charges, I'm the one that asked all the rate questions, and you answered them. I asked them before you answered them, so you addressed them significantly. There's like a penny difference or something like that, or a fraction of a penny difference. It's not that much money, but if the annual credit is offsets that, and then if it's a wash or if it's beneficial or whatever, then that's cool. But if it's not, then I'd like to know, what it is. Okay, do you understand what I'm asking?
I do to a degree, but again, I think just want to make sure we're distinct between talking about this fixed supply rate program and what a community solar thing is. And again, it might even be worth looking at this slide again. You might open the next one down, the menu difference. But
one is the supplier. It's like FedEx, right? The delivery person. That's Central Hudson.
Yep, the top part here.
And they buy, right? Exactly. Okay, but the delivery person is supply charges, the middle part of the bill, right?
Well, okay, delivery, Central Hudson supplier is us designating how and where and how much our support.
Right. And then the top part of the bill is the actual power that you're buying. So you're paying $87.08 for the electricity that you use that month. Is that true?
Nope. No, this is the delivery charges. This is what I'm basically paying
so
to
the
get it
top is
delivered
the
to my house.
delivery charge. Oh yeah, okay, that's fine. And
Yep.
then the bottom is, so what are you paying for? So what do you pay for so the delivery charges are based on what you used, okay?
Yep, that's the way they still break it down, except for the one fixed fee for having a meter. That's the $20 per month.
All right,
Otherwise, based on usage.
Okay, and then the middle one is, so I flipped it. So the middle one is what the electricity cost, or is that another intermediary?
Nope, that's what the electricity costs. Everything's
Okay.
that's
All
the supply rate.
And that's actually one of my major complaints is the delivery charges have become
more predominant.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Versus the other.
2/3. Yeah, it's often 2/3 of the bill.
All right, so I flipped them. Yeah, you're right. And then so that adjustment, offsets, let's just say it offsets a lot of the bill, but how often do you get that adjustment? And if it's, if you said 10%, that's fine. But if it's based on something if it's generated on something that's fixed, like how much they paid to put in all the hardware, then it's somewhat predictable. But, what else could it be based on? That's what I'm asking you. And you may not know.
Well, it might be a bit of a black box, but it really does reduce down to within their business model, they structure it to be, and this does look like a fantastic month in that majority of, my delivery charges were zeroed out. It does not always work out that way. It works out, and I've actually had to spreadsheet it because there can be a bit of a lapse.
Right.
But it does work out to that the credits added up represent about 10% of my total delivery and supply charges over a year. And so that's what they work out in their model. That's how they assign it. And it is a bit of a black box that I am actually working on penetrating, understanding for the community solar developers, just
Right.
so that I can explain it to municipalities, especially as we move into this very cool new opportunity about opt-out community solar. So I'm
Yeah.
very much on the front lines of this, but really I hope it doesn't sound like I'm trying to oversimplify it, but they work it out in their business model to provide a 10% credit to their customers. And here, maybe this will help too. Let me tell you a true story. I signed up to Nexamp like in 2018 for a project that they were setting up near Wappingers Falls. And it was going to be like 3 months till it went live. Long story short, it took them a year and a half before it went live. It went live in the summer of 2019. And then around that same time, and it was my apportionment was based on my historic usage from the 12 months prior to like 2018. So part of 2017 to 2018. But in 2019, I started driving an electric car. And so my electric usage was way up. And so I was not getting 10% savings in the first half year of having this community solar subscription. And I contacted them and I said, hey, I'm not getting 10% savings. And they're like, all right, well, we've got another solar project where we can basically adjust your allotment to get you the 10%. And they did.
Yeah.
It's not the detail you're looking for, but it shows how that's how it works. It's one of the mechanisms in their model that does, and that's the target from a customer perspective. You should see 10% savings.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the other question I have, you have 3 intermediaries in this. You have, because everyone has to be paid. Yeah, thank you. Jewel, Hudson Valley Energy, which I guess is you, and then Columbia Utilities, because rather than just Central Hudson. So since 3 partners have to be paid, is that built into the rate?
It is, yeah. And I can tell you exactly, it's 8/100ths of a cent that we share. And that's what the utility, the suppliers, not the utility, the suppliers have to include that 8/100ths in their bid, and it is included in that rate. So the 6.361 includes that 8/100ths of a cent per kilowatt hour, and that's how the administrators and me as a support organization get paid.
Okay. And again, this is just another question that you may know, but it's not necessarily your domain. How did the delivery charges, it was all of a sudden, it was, as I say, a few dollars a month, or maybe, in the tens place, as opposed to the hundreds place. How did that get passed through? Did the delivery charges go up so high? I've asked Central Hudson and they said some commission did it.
Whenever a utility wants to change their delivery rates, all these line items, the rates get on per line item, they have to file something called a rate case. It's basically a request, if you will, very formal, but it's a public process. And the public can comment on it and review it, and it's reviewed, and then ultimately a decision is made. There might be some adjustment in it, but the utility has to make a quote unquote transparent argument for why they want to increase rates.
Right. And if you wanted to find out about that, where would you?
All public knowledge. The Public Service Commission is, that's the New York State agency. Yeah, it's all filings, including all CCA filings, Juul's implementation plan, everything. The local laws for all the communities. All of that's available through information case matters off of the Public Service Commission or the Department of Public Service.
And their site would be something like publicservicecommission.gov.
I forget what it is, but yeah, I can. If you wanted to contact me, I can definitely share. I can even send links to you for things you might want to find.
What's your name?
I'm Jeff Demansky.
Jeff. Okay.
And then you can use this. Yeah, the easiest thing is to use.
I saw that at the end. I took it down.
Yeah, contact us at that email or give me a call.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate it, and for answering the additional questions. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Take care. Have a good night.
We now return to our awkward silence, unless there's any other questions. Don't see anything else in the chat box. Thank you. Thank yous for the thank yous. Yep, I don't see any additional questions in the chat box. I'm here. Feel free to unmute. Matter of fact, I'll even turn on my video screen so you can see I'm a live person here in Beacon.
Hey, Jeff, this is Mike Whitten. I just wanted to say that I put the dps.ny.gov. That's the Public Service Commission website.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Michael. Yeah, speaking of too much information.
Yeah.
And that's town board member of Clinton, Michael Whitten. And Ray, I don't know if Ray's still with us. Yeah, I see Ray still signed in. For those of you, this is recorded, and again, it will be available, but we'll be back on Tuesday night. Same bat time, different bat channel, different link. But yeah, if anyone else you want to send that to, let them know. It's tiny, I can enter it into the chat to everybody. Tiny URL, let me type it out while I talk. So for Tuesday night's meeting, it's tinyurl.com/HVCP June 1. That's the URL for our next meeting, our second meeting. But we're here and it's been fun. You know, that's our helpline, 845-859-9099. Give us a call. You get me and Jake and Jacob. It's ridiculous. I'm going to have, it's Jeff, Jake, and Jacob on the helpline at Hudson Valley Energy to help you out. And the Jewel team's there as well. So if you have any questions, let us know. Getting the light so you can actually see me here. Oops, I got to press enter on that so you can actually see the URL. It's just the three of us. Thanks for coming, Supervisor Ray.
Another spectacular job.
Hey, thanks. I'm going to stop recording actually right now. Now that you've given me that awesome compliment,
Yeah.
I'll press stop. I try to keep my nose down too. So.
I'll miss the next one.
Okay, no problem.